including stints working as an information warrior for the U.S. government in the Soviet Union, consulting for the Russian Securities and Exchange Commissions in the 1990s, and co-heading a research institute at the Higher School of Economics, HSE, in Moscow since 2011. These experiences, from being an accidental target of a honey trap by the KGB in the Soviet era to witnessing the fall of the Twin Towers from Moscow in 2001, helped me understand how Russia does and does not work. More important, I rely on research by a new generation of scholars that is frequently at odds with conventional wisdom and has received little attention outside academia. In the coming book, you will learn how my colleagues and I conduct surveys that detect whether Russians are lying about Putin's popularity, scrape the internet to find political and economic ties among Russian elites, identify bots on Twitter to track propaganda campaigns, and use Russian electoral data to reveal fraud, follow the Kremlin's efforts to manipulate public opinion and interfere in foreign elections, gather archival data to trace how Stalin-era purges shape voting in contemporary Russia, track political graffiti in Moscow to study protest, and interview top Russian elites to explore how decisions are made in the Kremlin. This research, much of it unknown even to diligent readers, offers some of the best evidence we have of how Russia works. The goal is not just to deepen our understanding of Russian politics, but also to add scholarly voices to our national debate on the topic. If you want to understand Russia better, and who doesn't, the chapters that follow are a good place to start. 1. Information Warrior. I was an information warrior before it was cool. Every few years, from 1959 until 1992, the United States and Soviet Union each swapped 24 guides to host standing exhibits about life in their respective countries. Born in the Khrushchev-era thaw in U.S.-Soviet relations, the exhibits were an early example of public diplomacy and became a critical tool for each country to promote its vision and values. Traveling from city to city every 2 months, the exhibits allowed Soviet and U.S. citizens a rare face-to-face encounter with their Cold War rivals. I was one such guide. From November 1987 to January 1989, I worked on the Information USA exhibit that displayed fax machines, home computers, CD players, and other information technologies used in daily life in the United States. Each day, more than 8,000 Soviet citizens came to the exhibit. We were the first Americans most of them had ever met. A woman in Magnitogorsk, a steel-making town closed to almost all Westerners for the past 40 years, exclaimed as she approached my stand, "An American, a real live American. I never thought I would see a real live American." I was there at a good time. Relations between Moscow and Washington had chilled in the decades after Nikita Khrushchev's fall from power, as had the reception of our predecessors on previous exhibits. But by the time I joined, Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev's policy of glasnost, or openness, was in full swing. Intrepid Russian journalists were reassessing many painful moments in Soviet history that had long been off-limits for discussion, from the Great Terror of the 1930s to the corruption of the Brezhnev era in the 1960s and 1970s. For the first time in its history, the Communist Party allowed and encouraged public meetings to debate reforms to the Soviet system, and our exhibit halls often became sites of pitched political discussions among our Russian guests. 6 days a week, for 8 hours a day, we rotated between 2 hours standing with our props on a small stage answering questions and 1 hour recovering in our makeshift lounge walled off from the crowds, but not the noise, by black canvas curtains. No topic was out of bounds. Is Michael Jackson popular? Why do you have to pay for college? Why does the United States support the racist regime of South Africa? Are you married? Why not? Why do the women guides wear so little makeup? Which Georgian writers do you read in the United States? If Americans don't have internal passports, how do you catch criminals? We heard it all. Each guide brought different perspectives to these questions. Most